Today we're talking about the FUJIFILM X-H2S and how you can transform it into a cinema camera. And by the way, if you are interested in purchasing any of the items that I show you today, the links will be in the description down below. So as mentioned, today we are taking the FUJIFILM X-H2S. So why the X-H2S? Well, basically it's the most capable video camera from Fujifilm, maybe aside of the GFX 100 Mark II. It has OpenGate 6.2K, it can also do 4K 120, it can do internal ProRes, external B-roll, and more. So it is a very capable video camera and can easily output great results that can be really comparable to high-end video camera. Now I pair this camera with a small rig cage. So why this particular cage? Well, first, it's a 3-point attach cage, meaning that if I have to rig some elements to it, I don't want it to move around, right? And having 3 points of attach allow it to stay in place even if I grab the camera out of the tripod and move around with it. So this is for the camera and the cage. Now let's move on to the lens that I'm using today. Viltrox didn't send me this anamorphic lens and the whole set of it, the 35, 50 and 75 millimeter focal length for test. So those are T2 lenses. So I'm testing them out today, and that's also the reason why I'm making this video, because I wanted to test them out on the FUJIFILM X-H2S. So I thought, why not make a video about it? So those are anamorphic lenses. As you can see, those are quite hefty lenses, right? It's not the typical run and gun lens that you will find in any other cameras. Those are really robust and heavy cinema lenses. Now, because we are trying to mount a PL mount lens onto our Fujifilm, we need an adapter. And for this particular case, I'm using the DZO film adapter from PL to X mount. Now, this is a good adapter because it also has an under mount that you can directly mount into a plate and make sure that you really distribute the weight of the lens, not onto the mount of your camera, but onto the mount right here by fixing it onto a plate, a base plate. Now we also have a lot of accessories here. We have some base plates, some lens support, again, to more distribute the weight of the heavy lens that we're using. Now here we also have a follow focus V60 from Small Rig, as well as the ZG Cine V19 to basically deliver power to our camera, as well as our monitor here, which is the OC G7 4K that also supports anamorphic D-squeeze, which is great if we want to monitor our video directly on the monitor and see the end result of our image. Now, when it comes to the tripod that I use right now, this is the Small Rig AD100 that is basically good enough to support the weight of this setup, but also comes with a fluid head and is really helpful when you need to pan or tilt, etc. It really helps you with some video movements. So that's pretty great for that. So that's the one that I'm using right now. And without further ado, let's see how I mount the whole thing. So I start with the FUJIFILM X-H2S and mount directly the cage onto it. And after that, what I will do is that I will focus on the bottom part of the camera. I will first mount the cheese plate under the X-H2S and the adapter from DZO film. That will allow me to really distribute the weight of the lens, as I said. Next, I will then mount a small adapter to be able to connect the cheese plate to the base plate, the Small Rig base plate that I use, and then fix it to this one. Now, the advantage of this particular base plate is that first, it supports 15mm Rhodes, but it also allows you to change the heights of your camera setup compared to the Rhodes. And that's very useful, especially when you don't know what type of lenses you're going to use. If you have smaller lens, you can really reduce that height. But if you have bigger lens, you can really go a bit higher and change that height to make sure that there is no problem for your follow focus or for different accessories that you have. Now, once the bottom part is done, I will then fix my tripod plate under that particular base plate to make sure that later I can easily put the whole setup on a tripod and I won't have to care about it too much. Then we move on the top of the camera where I will add the top handle. Now the top handle is basically for me to have an easy handle over the whole setup, right? If I want to take it on or off of my tripod, or if I want to move around with it. And after that, I will pretty much move everything onto the tripod because now I know that I can handle everything properly and basically have the tripod support the weight of the setup for me. And it's easier than just on my desk. So let's move to the tripod. Now moving on to the tripod, the next point is to add the rods. Without the rods, you basically cannot add any lens support or follow focus or battery. So you have to add those first. In this case, I use 9 inches rods because the lenses are quite big and I really need that length to be able to fit the whole setup. If you have a smaller lens, you don't need a 9-inch. I think that a 6-inch would be more than enough. So after fixing those 9 inches rods, I will then insert my follow focus and then my lens support. And it's important that you do that at this point. Otherwise, after adding your lens, you will not be able to do that again after. So make sure that you add them in this particular order. And now it's finally time to mount the lens onto our adapter. Now, once the lens is mounted, it's also important to make sure that you support the weight of the lens itself a little bit until you are able to connect that particular lens support onto it. Because again, you don't want your mount to just come off and get completely destroyed because of the lens, because of the weight of the lens, right? So make sure when you mount that lens, that fix it in a proper way first, using the PL mount, but also make sure that you support the weight of the lens, that you add that lens support, and that everything is in place so that nothing breaks. Now we have the lens, we have the camera, we have the lens support. I'm just going to connect my V60 follow focus, which is the manual follow focus that I'm using here. So I connect this to the focus ring of this particular lens. Make sure that it rotates properly and that the focus moves properly. And then I'm going to move to the back of the camera with the battery. So I'm going to mount my V-mount adapter to the rods and then add my battery into the back of the camera. Now the next step is to mount our monitor. So here the OZ G7, and all that I have to do after is to connect my monitor to my camera using an HDMI cable, as well as the monitor to the power delivery. I also tend to connect my camera to the power delivery to make sure that I don't run out of the battery at any time. And that's pretty much it. I'm pretty much done. All that I have to do now is to add my matte box. Now the matte box is useful if you want to avoid flares, but also if you want to slide in and slide out ND filters or any other filters that you would want to use without having to buy specific filters for specific filter thread every time, right? I can just use this particular matte box and have filter thread for this particular matte box, and I don't have to like change filters every time. So this is why people would use matte box usually. And that's pretty much it. That's the whole setup here. Now I also try to, sometimes it depends, tend to add side handle as well to help me if I want to have easier way to move my setup around. But that's pretty much it right now. I'm pretty much done with my setup. So let me know down in the comments if you have any questions about this particular setup. It's not a light setup. To be clear here, this lens is not a light setup at all. I have a lighter setup than this, especially if I use my Takumar lenses, or if I use a Helios or any other lens that is way lighter than this. But for this particular setup, you really need this full, like everything, right? Lens support and everything to make sure that everything stays in place and that nothing gets broken. So let me know if you have any question down in the comment. Thank you for watching today's video. And if you want the written version of this particular video, you can also check my website for the full article with every single link to every single part that I used to build this rig. That it will be linked there, but it's also linked down in the description.